Joe Connolly stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., staring at his own face. He looked tired. Older than his 42 years. Defeated. It had been 3 weeks since the incident. 3 weeks since he'd become a national punchline. 3 weeks since his career, his entire life, had exploded on live television. Joe Connolly was the weatherman for KDKA Pittsburgh. Or at least, he had been. Now he was the worst weatherman in America. The video had been played on every late-night show. Johnny Carson had done a bit about him. Saturday Night Live had parodied him. The local newspaper had run a cartoon of him with the caption, "Maybe he should have checked his own forecast." 3 weeks ago, Joe Connolly had made a mistake. A big one. On live television? In front of 2 million viewers. And people had gotten hurt because of it. Joe couldn't sleep anymore. Couldn't eat. Couldn't leave his house without people recognizing him, laughing, pointing. "Hey, aren't you the guy who—" Yes, he was that guy. The guy who got it catastrophically wrong. The guy who failed. The guy everyone was laughing at. Joe Connolly had become a cautionary tale. A meme before memes existed, and he didn't know how to come back from it. But what Joe didn't know was that someone had seen the footage. Someone who wasn't laughing. Someone who understood what it felt like to fail in front of millions of people. Fred Rogers. And Fred Rogers was about to do something that would change everything. 3 weeks earlier, November 12, 1983, Joe Connolly had been KDKA's chief meteorologist. For 16 years, he was good at his job, reliable, trusted. Pittsburgh families planned their weekends around Joe's forecasts. If Joe says it's going to snow, it's going to snow. On the morning of November 12, 1983, Joe looked at the weather data coming in from the National Weather Service. A storm system was approaching western Pennsylvania. The model showed it tracking south away from Pittsburgh. Joe ran the numbers 3 times, checked the satellite imagery, consulted with the National Weather Service. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Pittsburgh would get some rain, maybe some wind, but nothing serious. The storm would miss them. At 6 p.m., Joe went on air with the evening forecast. "Good evening, Pittsburgh. I've got good news for you. That storm system everyone's been worried about, it's tracking south. We'll see some rain tonight, maybe a bit of wind, but nothing to worry about. No need to change your weekend plans. The worst of it will miss us completely." Joe smiled at the camera, confident, reassuring. "So enjoy your Friday night, folks. The weather's going to cooperate." He was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. At 9:47 p.m., the storm changed direction. Instead of tracking south, it turned north, directly into Pittsburgh. What was supposed to be a minor rainstorm became something else entirely. Hurricane-force winds, torrential rain, flash flooding. And Pittsburgh, the entire city, was completely unprepared. Because Joe Connolly had told them it would be fine. People were out at dinner, at movies, at football games. Kids were at sleepovers. No one had battened down. No one had prepared. The storm hit like a freight train. Trees came down across the city. Power lines snapped. Roads flooded in minutes. A father and his 2 kids were driving home from a restaurant when a tree fell across their car. The father died. The kids survived. An elderly woman's basement flooded while she was sleeping. She drowned. A construction worker was killed when scaffolding collapsed in the wind. By midnight, 3 people were dead. Dozens were injured. Thousands were without power. The city was in chaos. And everyone knew whose fault it was. Joe Connolly, the weatherman who said everything would be fine. Joe found out about the deaths at 1 a.m. He was at home, watching the news coverage in horror, watching his city being destroyed by the storm he'd said wouldn't come. When the reporter mentioned the fatalities, Joe felt his legs give out. He'd killed them, not directly, not intentionally, but his mistake, his forecast, had left them unprepared. If he'd warned them, if he'd told them to stay home, if he'd been right, they'd still be alive. Joe called the station immediately. I need to go on air. I need to issue a correction. I need to tell people, Joe, you can't. The power's out across half the city. And even if it wasn't, people are angry. Really angry. We've been getting calls, threats. You need to stay home. But I have to. Joe, stay home. We'll handle it. Joe hung up the phone and sat in his dark living room, listening to the storm outside. The storm he'd said wouldn't come, and he knew. His career was over. The footage of Joe's forecast went viral before viral was even a term. Every news station in the country played it. Over and over. Joe Connolly smiling at the camera. The worst of it will miss us completely. Cut to devastation. Flooding. Death. The contrast was brutal. The headlines were merciless. Weatherman's deadly mistake. Connolly's catastrophic forecast. How one man's error cost 3 lives. The talk shows picked it up. Johnny Carson did a bit where he pretended to be Joe, giving hilariously wrong forecasts. Tomorrow, sunny and 75. Picture of blizzard. Oops. The audience roared with laughter. Saturday Night Live did a whole sketch. An actor playing Joe, completely clueless, while disaster unfolded behind him. It was everywhere. And Joe Connolly couldn't escape it. He was fired within a week. KDK released a statement. We take forecasting very seriously. Joe Connolly is no longer with the station. Joe became a pariah. He couldn't go to the grocery store without people staring, whispering, pointing. At a gas station, someone yelled, "Hey, what's the weather gonna be?" "Let me guess, you have no idea." People laughed. Joe drove home and didn't leave his house for 2 weeks. Fred Rogers saw the footage on the evening news. He watched Joe Connolly smiling, confident, telling Pittsburgh the storm would miss them. And then he watched the aftermath. The destruction. The deaths. Everyone else was laughing, making jokes, turning Joe Connolly into a meme. But Fred wasn't laughing. Fred was thinking about something else. Joe Connolly had tried to keep people safe. He'd looked at the data. He'd consulted experts. He'd done his job the way he'd done it for 16 years. And he'd been wrong. Catastrophically, publicly, tragically wrong. But he'd tried. Most people don't try. Most people don't care. Most people don't spend 16 years trying to help their community prepare for weather. Joe Connolly had cared. And he'd failed. And now he was being destroyed for it. Fred Rogers picked up the phone. KDKA was not happy to hear from Fred Rogers. "Mr. Rogers, with all due respect, Joe Connolly is no longer employed here. We can't help you reach him." "I'm not asking you to help me reach him. I'm asking where he is. Because I'd like to talk to him." "Why?" "Because he's a person. I imagine he's going through something very difficult right now." The station manager was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mr. Rogers, do you understand what happened? People died because of his mistake." "I understand that," Fred said gently. "And I imagine Joe understands that too. Which is why I'd like to talk to him." Another pause. "Then, I'll see what I can do." Joe Connolly hadn't left his apartment in 3 weeks. The blinds were closed. The TV was off. The phone was unplugged. He just sat in the dark, replaying that night over and over in his head. The worst of it will miss us completely. 3 people dead. Because of him. There was a knock at the door. Joe didn't move. Another knock. "Mr. Connolly? My name is Fred Rogers. I'd like to talk to you for a moment." Joe's eyes widened. Fred Rogers? The children's television host? What the hell did he want? Joe considered not answering. But something made him get up. Something made him walk to the door. He opened it a crack. Fred Rogers was standing there, wearing his cardigan, holding nothing, just standing there with that gentle expression. "Hi, Joe. May I come in?" Joe stared at him. "Why are you here?" "Because I saw what happened, and I wanted to check on you." "Check on me? You don't even know me." "That's true, but I know what it's like to feel like you've let people down, and I didn't want you to be alone with that feeling." Joe's throat tightened. I killed 3 people." "No," Fred said gently. "A storm killed 3 people. You made a mistake, a very public one, but you didn't kill anyone. I told them it would be safe. They believed me, and they died." "Yes, and that's a terrible burden to carry. But Joe, you tried to keep them safe. That's what you were trying to do. You looked at the data. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. And you were wrong. But you tried." Joe felt tears coming. He'd been holding them back for 3 weeks. "Everyone's laughing at me. I'm a joke. My career is over. My life is over." "Your career might be over," Fred said, "but your life isn't. May I come in? I'd like to talk with you." Joe stepped aside. They sat at Joe's kitchen table. The apartment was a mess. Dishes in the sink. Newspapers everywhere. The TV remote on the floor. Joe looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Because he hadn't. "Everyone hates me," Joe said quietly. "They should. I screwed up. People died." Fred was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Joe wasn't expecting. "Do you know how many weather forecasts you've given in your career?" Joe blinked. "What?" "You worked at KDKA for 16 years. How many forecasts do you think that is? Twice a day? Every day?" I don't know. I don't know. Thousands, I guess. Let's say 12,000. Just estimating. 12,000 times you looked at data, made a prediction, and told people what to expect. How many of those forecasts were wrong? I'm asking seriously. How many times were you wrong? Joe thought about it. I mean, forecasts are never perfect. But major mistakes? Maybe 20, 30? So out of 12,000 forecasts, you were significantly wrong 30 times. That's a 99.75% accuracy rate. Do you know what that means? Joe shook his head. It means that for 16 years, you helped people prepare for weather. You helped them plan weddings, cancel trips when ice was coming, stay home during blizzards. You kept people safe 12,000 times. But everyone remembers the one time you got it wrong. But people died. Yes, and that's tragedy. But Joe, you didn't cause that storm. You didn't make it change direction. You looked at the best data available, consulted with experts, and made a judgment call. And you were wrong. But you were trying to help. Joe was crying now. Really crying. For the first time since it happened. I can't forgive myself. How do I live with this? Fred leaned forward. You live with it by remembering that you cared enough to try. Most people don't care, Joe. Most people don't spend 16 years trying to keep strangers safe. You did. And one night, despite your best efforts, you failed. But that doesn't erase the 12,000 times you didn't fail. But everyone's laughing at me. Yes, because it's easier to laugh at someone's failure than to acknowledge how terrifying it is that anyone can fail. You scare people, Joe, because you remind them that no matter how hard we try, we can all make mistakes, even catastrophic ones. And that's frightening. So they laugh instead of facing that fear. Joe wiped his face. I don't know how to come back from this. Maybe you don't come back. Maybe you go forward to something different, What do you mean? I mean, your career as a TV weatherman might be over, but your knowledge isn't. Your experience isn't. Your desire to help people isn't. Maybe this is the end of one thing and the beginning of something else. Like what? Fred smiled. I don't know, but I know this. The worst thing you could do right now is hide. Because if you hide, all anyone will remember is the mistake. But if you show up, if you keep trying to help people, in whatever way you can, then that becomes part of your story too. 2 weeks later, Fred Rogers invited Joe Connolly onto Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. The network was horrified. Fred, you can't. He's radioactive. He's a national joke. If you put him on your show, you'll be associated with him. It could hurt your reputation. I don't care about my reputation, Fred said. I care about Joe. And I care about children who are learning that mistakes are unforgivable. And I want to show them something different. But Fred, we're doing the episode. Asterisk. The episode aired on December 3rd, 1983. Fred introduced Joe to the camera. Today, I want to introduce you to my friend Joe Connolly. Joe is a meteorologist. That's someone who studies weather. And Joe wants to talk to you about something very important. Making mistakes. Joe sat across from Fred. He looked nervous. Fragile. Hi, Joe said to the camera. My name is Joe, and I made a very big mistake. Fred nodded. ENCOURAGINGLY. Joe continued. I'm a weatherman. My job is to tell people what the weather is going to be. And I made a forecast that was wrong. Very wrong. And because I was wrong, people got hurt. Fred spoke gently. That must have been very scary for you. It was. And it still is. Because I tried my best. I looked at all the information I had. And I still got it wrong. And I feel terrible about that. What do you wish you could say to the people watching? Joe looked directly at the camera. I wish I could say, I'm sorry. I tried to keep you safe. And I failed. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. But I want you to know, I cared. I always cared. And making a mistake, even a big one, doesn't mean you didn't care. Fred turned to the camera. Sometimes, even when we try our very best, things go wrong. And that's scary. But Joe showed me something important. Trying to help, even when there's a risk of failure, is braver than not trying at all. The episode was controversial. Some parents complained. You're defending someone whose mistake killed people. But more parents wrote to say, thank you. My child has been terrified of making mistakes. This helped. And Joe Connolly started getting different letters. Not hate mail. Not jokes-style letters like, Mr. Connolly, I'm a nurse. Last year I made a medication error and a patient nearly died. I've wanted to quit every day since. But watching you on Mr. Rogers made me realize I can keep trying to help people. Thank you. Joe, I'm a pilot. I'm terrified every day that I'll make a mistake. Seeing you own yours and keep going helped me. Thank you. Dear Joe, I'm a teacher. I made a mistake that hurt a student. I thought my career was over. But you showed me that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. Joe read every letter. And slowly, very slowly, he started to believe what Fred had told him. One mistake doesn't erase a lifetime of caring. Joe Connolly never returned to TV meteorology, but he didn't hide either. He became a weather safety educator. He traveled to schools, teaching children about severe weather preparedness. He worked with the National Weather Service to improve forecast communication. He gave talks about failure, about public mistakes, about living with regret while still moving forward. And every talk started the same way. My name is Joe Connolly. And 16 years ago, I made a forecast that cost 3 lives. I'll carry that with me forever. But I won't let it stop me from trying to keep people safe. Because that's what Fred Rogers taught me. Caring enough to risk failure is braver than never trying at all. In 2001, Joe received a letter. It was from one of the children who'd survived the car accident that night, the one where the tree fell and killed his father. The letter said, "Mr. Connolly, my name is David. You don't know me, but you knew my father. He died in the storm you didn't predict. I was 7 years old. For years, I hated you. I blamed you for his death. I thought if you'd warned us, we wouldn't have been on that road. But I'm 25 now, and I just watched your TED Talk about failure and trying again. And I realized something. You didn't kill my father. The storm did. You made a mistake. A terrible one. But you were trying to help Dot, and for the last 18 years, you've been trying to make up for it. You've been teaching people how to stay safe. You've probably saved lives. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not sure forgiveness is even the right word, because you didn't do anything malicious. You just got it wrong. But I want you to know, I see you trying. And I think that matters. Thank you for not giving up." David Joe read the letter 3 times. Then he called Fred Rogers. "Fred, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. I got a letter today from one of the kids who lost his father that night." Fred was quiet. He said, "I've been trying to make up for it, and that it matters." "Yes," Fred said gently. "It does. I don't think I'll ever stop feeling guilty, but I think I can live with it now, because of what you showed me. That trying even when we fail is worth something." Yes. Joe, it's worth everything." Fred Rogers died in 2003. Joe Connolly attended the funeral. A reporter asked him, "What did Fred Rogers mean to you?" Joe thought for a long moment. Then he said, "Fred Rogers found me at my lowest point. When everyone else was laughing at me, he saw me. When everyone else saw a failure, he saw someone who tried to help. He taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned, that mistakes, even catastrophic ones, don't erase the intention behind them. That caring enough to risk failure is a form of courage. I made a terrible mistake. 3 people died. I'll carry that forever. But Fred taught me that I could carry it and still move forward. That I could live with the guilt and still try to help people. That failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. Fred Rogers didn't just save me. He taught me how to save myself." Joe Connolly is 73 years old now. He still gives talks about failure, about public shame, about living with regret. And every talk includes a story about a man in a cardigan who showed up at his door when everyone else was laughing. The man who said, "You tried to keep people safe. That takes courage." The man who taught him that caring, even when it leads to failure, is still worth everything.